All right, ready to get started?
Yes, sir.
All right, very cool. Well, thank you guys for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. Our latest edition, and I think this will probably be our last one before the election, of Coffee with the Candidates. And I'm John Cavalier. I own Cavalier House Books here. And this is Miss Muriel Laws, of
That's
course,
right.
which you guys know, who's running for Parish Council, District 6.
Exactly. Yes.
So thank you so much for coming to have coffee with us
and I
tonight.
appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad we could get you in under the radar before Election Day this
Yes,
Saturday.
You've been very flexible. I appreciate that.
Oh no, thanks. I'm glad we can get you in for sure.
Yes.
Well, we begin these events basically with a little Q&A between myself and the candidate. But first things first is kind of introductions. Just tell the folks who you are and how you got to here.
All right. Well, as he said, I'm Muriel Laws. I am originally from Washington, D.C., born and raised. I'm from a family of 14. I am the seventh of the 14. My mom and dad were self-made people. My dad was a cab driver. My mom was a seamstress. They were two people who taught us three things. One, our word, the importance of our word. Two, they taught us our work ethic. And three, accountability. They taught us to be accountable for our actions. So I take that as my legacy, as their legacy, and I carry that with me every day. I came down here because, well, let me go back. I worked for the Department of Justice for about 24 years, and then I went to the VA. But before I went to the VA, I managed millions of dollars with the Department of Justice from California to North Dakota. Those funds were the Crime Bill Fund from 1995 with President Clinton. It was a $500 million grant program. And our job was to administer it throughout the country, the local units of government, state and local units of government. So I ended up with the state of California managing $52 million of that $500 million grant. I had 1,200 state and local units of government to manage those funds. And that was very interesting, very enlightening.
Sure.
It gave me a lot of experience talking to mayors, city managers, overseeing the budgets of all of those state and local units of government, and actually just traveling and seeing what they do with those funds. It was amazing. I had the opportunity, I remember once going to Compton, California, suiting up in a bulletproof vest to ride along with the sheriff to see what the funds were doing with the local grant money that we gave them. Also, one of the other times was Chicago, Illinois. I traveled to Chicago, and what they were doing was taking the grant funds and demolishing drug houses in the neighborhoods or dilapidated homes in the neighborhoods, and then turning them into parks and so forth. So they waited until I got there to actually destroy the home, to show me what
Wow.
what the money. So
Yeah.
I'm amazed, and I was impressed. But they too wanted to show that the money was working, and so I did that for about 24 years, and then I came down here after Katrina to administer a $58 million criminal justice infrastructure. I don't know if you remember, but they were talking about jurisdictions, parishes were adjudicating out of buses. Some of the deaths were found at the top of the building instead of the bottom. That's how much water was there.
Right.
So the Department of Justice put $58 million into rebuilding the criminal justice infrastructure, and I was the lead of that project. I was down here for about 4 months, and during that time I met my husband, who convinced me through gumbo and magnolias that this would be the perfect place to move. So I came down and became the executive to the director of the VA, who was rebuilding the hospital in New Orleans.
Right.
So that was amazing. That was an amazing experience to go through that process. People were still suffering from the memory of Katrina. It just happened less than 2 years prior. And just to see the sheer post-traumatic stress that was going on from the staff to the vets. It was just amazing to go through that process. But I left there and ended up going back to the Environmental Protection Agency in D.C., where I actually oversaw the Superfund. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I oversaw that contract, $12 million for the hazard ranking system and the Superfund contract for the Environmental Protection Agency. So I ended my career in 2017 doing just that. And it was almost like a full circle because every issue that is existing right now that we are dealing with, from the environment to to the FEMA issue with the parish, to law enforcement, to almost every issue that we're dealing with. I work in those federal agencies
Right.
to administer those funds and to oversee them. So I believe I am walking in my destined footsteps.
Right.
I hope that wasn't a too long
No.
answer to your question, but that's who I am in a nutshell.
No, that's fantastic, and it actually kind of leads me into my next question with with your DOJ experience, your VA experience, and your EPA experience. A lot of letters going on there, but
Yeah, DC is known for their acronyms.
yeah. But with all of that experience, you've had, like you said, you've kind of had that top-down bird's eye view of distributing
Yes.
the funds to local governments, municipalities, and that sort of thing. What sort of insight do you think that would provide as a parish council person in navigating all of that?
That's a good question. And I believe that I am very, very capable, competent, and committed to make a difference on this level. And because of that is why I'm running. I bring not only the experience, but I bring the resource connection as well. And I also know how to manage a budget, which is something that I don't think is happening right now effectively. I know how to look for the pork in the budget. I know how to find what is being overly expended and what is being underfunded. For instance, I was just at the chamber just last week and they were talking about the drainage, and I know you may be getting to that, but they said two of the districts, the largest districts, are unfunded.
Right.
And that bothered me.
Sure.
It bothers me because I live in one of those districts. That's what I'm running for. And I see the development going on in those districts. How can you possibly tell me that is being unfunded? Drainage. So, for my experience, I look at the projections. I look at the expenditures. I go line item by line item to see what is going on, how it's being managed, whether it's being managed effectively, and then properly do something about it. And so my job as a project officer and a program manager was to do that for every state and local unit of government in California, which was quite a few of them. And there were some who ineffectively mismanaged their money. And I was the person who had to go with them, do desk audits, sit down with them and find out where the money was being expended, reallocate, and then hopefully try to save their funding, which is why when I heard about the FEMA issue, I just felt right there that if I was there, it's probably something I could have not avoided, but probably worked it, whereas we wouldn't have had the situation in the first place. That's what I think. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
I like
Sure.
to ask that because if it's something that was a little vague, I would, finish telling you. But if I answered your question, then that's a good thing.
No, yeah, absolutely. And you brought up the unfunded drainage districts, which of course are one of the big topics among all of the parish council candidates. A lot of people have put together different ideas of trying to figure out how to fund them. Some people think that the pot needs to be shared through some of the other drainage districts. Some people think that new taxes need to be levied. How do you think it should go about being funded?
I am of the sound mind that I would never want to assess a tax on something that is unexplainable. And right now, what is unexplainable is why is it unfunded right now?
Right.
Why, if the 2016 happened, it was a huge disaster. Why wasn't it immediately addressed then? I will follow the succession of the money in the budget. Before I talk about any action, I would do what I would call an audit, an assessment. Where has it gone for the last 3 to 4 years? Where has it gone? Because if it happened 3 years ago, and then in 2019, we had an event that lasted only half a day, and some people literally flooded 2019 that didn't flood in 2016, that is telling me that there is an exasperation of the problem. It has increased. So to say, oh, I'm just going to tax it, I want to find out what's going on, where's the money, how is it being addressed, why wasn't it addressed, and then do an assessment of where we can go from here. It may not need a tax. It may be just that there's some money that is being overly funded on something else.
Okay.
Again, like you say, maybe we could just move it over. But it has to be looked at and it has to be assessed.
Sure. Well, let's go back to your introduction a little bit. So you retired from EPA in 2017.
I did.
And then after that, kind of begins your grassroots community activism here in Livingston Parish, and
Yes.
it started with a recycling petition.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about your experience with that, and also tell us a little bit about the need for recycling.
I think I added in there about me walking in my destiny.
Yeah.
And I just decided I didn't come down here to be an activist, although I spent 30 years in public service, serving the public. I didn't come down here. I was supposed to be traveling. I was supposed to be in Paris. And 30 years,
Sure.
you're ready to retire. But just one day in December, and I had actually come off of an accident, so I was home. And one day in December, I said, where is the recycling? I'm so tired of saving the recycling in my house. I said, where is the recycling? And so I did what any normal constituent would do. I made the attempt to call my council person. And as I've walked the neighborhood since January, I found that 99% of the people had the same problem that I had. I couldn't reach my council person, and they didn't know their council person. At least I knew him because I interacted at the council one night.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't reach him to ask where the recycling was. So me being tenacious, I don't know if I told you that, but being the 7th of 14, I know how to get my voice heard. I said, let me go and ask, because there's always ways to get around things. So I called the council, and they said, you have to get sponsored by your council person. So I said, well, he's not answering my call. So I said, okay, let me call the chair of the council and see if he can help me. So he put me on the agenda, and I went with the utmost concern of just saying, hey, we need recycling. And before I did that, I'm from the 5 Ps. You know what that is?
No, tell me.
Okay. I live by the 5 Ps, and I believe it works. Proper planning prevents poor performance. Those are my 5 Ps. So I said, since I got on the agenda, which was about 3 weeks from the time that I talked to the head of the chair, the council, I went out and I started walking, knocking on every door, just to ask, do you want recycling? And if you did, would you sign this petition? Because I felt if I came with a backup of people behind me, they don't have to be physically behind me, but the petition will show people were behind me,
Right.
then maybe something will happen. So I knocked every door, and Lord and behold, I ended up with 500 signatures. And my goal was to just get it on the ballot, or get somebody to say that they want it, that they hear us, maybe we can do something. So I went to the council, and it was literally just, we don't do this, we haven't done this, people are not interested, we haven't done this for a long time, it went away in 2016. It was just every excuse. And I'm saying, but 500 of your constituents want it. What do we do with that? And so Waste Management decided that they will offer a recycling kit at $59.95 per pickup. You would have to order the kit, fill it, and then send it off, and then spend another $60 to get another recycling kit. Now, imagine a family of about 6 kids. How many kits do you think they would need for a month? So that wasn't going to work. But I didn't tell them that. I said, okay. And after that, I said, I'm going to run. I'm going to fix several things. One, I'm going to fix the fact that people don't know who their council person is. They will know who I am. Mm-hmm. Two, they will have a voice, because that's something I didn't have. So you will have a voice. And three, we're going to address recycling because it is a must. It is a must that our children and grandchildren have a fair shot of good good environment, good air, and to live a healthy and safe life, because it's our duty to give it to them. So that's my passion about recycling. And I don't even know if it's because I worked at EPA, but it just helps to know
Sure.
what's out there and what I, as one person, can try to do to affect change for everyone as it relates to recycling. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And yeah, here in the city limits, we have recycling in Denham Springs.
I know that, yes.
And it's fantastic. You get a second trash can, and all you have to do is sort it out a little bit.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
And to speak for the people that you haven't even given the opportunity to talk to, for instance, I'm standing there with 500 people, and you're saying they don't want it. Okay? I'm standing there with 500 signatures, and you're saying they will never pay for something like that. Well, how do you know if you don't ask them?
Yeah.
You know, give them the opportunity to say yay or nay. And that's what I told everybody when I was knocking at the door. I'm not trying to persuade you to recycle what's in your house. All I'm asking you is, if you had the opportunity to decide whether you want it or not, would you like that? And that's why they were signing it, because that's what they wanted, that opportunity to say yes or no. And they didn't get it.
Yeah.
At that time.
So, sort of speculating on, whether your EPA experience kind of influenced your passion for recycling, or if perhaps you went to the EPA because you already had a passion for it. Livingston Parish is a coastal parish, and so the effects of coastal degradation are real for us, especially on the south end of the parish. Our neighbors just to the west of us, with all of the different refineries and chemical plants and things like that. So talk a little bit about just our geographic area and your kind of perspective on environmental issues in general for the parish.
And I understand that. I understand Louisiana is a special state. I'm going to put it that way. But what I do understand also is that I'm not on the state level or the national level. I'm on the local level. So I will address anything that I can affect change on the local level. My personal opinion, though, is that I heard at this conference that I went to that there are a lot of issues with the refinery as it relates to the runoff in the water. Mm-hmm. I understand that is a state issue that can be elevated to a national issue. I will say this: if that was to ever touch the local level, then I would be an advocate, tooth and nail, to fight for good water if that were to happen from a runoff. As far as the coastal, again, I would like to understand what's happening on each of those. The coastal, you said the west side. Mm-hmm. Yes, I will visit all of those areas and assess. Remember that assess?
Sure.
Proper planning prevents poor performance. If I haven't visited that in order to assess it, in order to speak on it, then that would be wrong for me to stand here right this minute. But I guarantee you, if it is something that needs to be addressed, that needs to be incorporated into the ordinances of Livingston Parish, yes, because that's what I'm doing right now. I have this big book that sits in my car right now.
Yeah.
And I read it because it's my job as the legislative body of Livingston Parish to understand everything that is going on in Livingston Parish, especially for District 6. but definitely for Livingston Parish as a whole, because what is affecting Hammond may affect Denham Springs.
Mm.
So I need to know what's going on. And so if the answer to your question is, I can't answer that right this minute if it is affecting the local level, but I will find out and I will seek some kind of action because it is my passion. I have 4 grandchildren, no, 8 grandchildren, right? 8 grandchildren, and they all deserve a decent place to live and breathe. So yes.
Absolutely. So let's get back to sort of the biggest issue at the Parish Council over the past several months, the master plan, the Envision Livingston Master Plan, which of course was adopted in 13 and was just readopted by ordinance just a couple Thursdays ago. What's your take on the master plan? So if you had been in office a couple weeks ago, how would you have voted for that?
Mm. Well, I would have asked why were we voting on it again anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because we had already spent way over $450,000 to even have it back in 2013. I would have asked why is it still sitting on the shelf? First of all, that's what I would have done, because what I will not do is vote for just anything. I tell people, even if you're not in my district, I'm not going to just vote for something that doesn't make sense for everyone. And I would not understand why are you voting on this now when it was already. Mm-hmm. Yes, it could be amended to address what the growth is now, but it was already there. So my problem with this is that I have been affected by what has happened with this zoning issue, coupling with the master plan. Okay, my development was affected personally by a 152 unit apartment complex dropped at the base of our homes without any notice, without any 30-day public hearing or anything. Just one morning we woke up and there it was, which affected every last single one of our home values. To this day, they're being affected. Why? Because people decided, no, they don't want that. They didn't have input, so they're deciding that they're just going to sell their home. So that's what's happening. Also in District 6, what is happening is a huge growth, construction growth, which is fine. I have no problem with growth. I'm all for growth. What I have a problem is the deluge of construction without the zoning up on top of a fractured infrastructure is going to crack. Mm-hmm. It's like sitting this on top of this table with 4 legs, but one of them is fractured.
Right.
It will fall. And I went through my district, and I know within a 10-mile radius, there is about 10 to 15 developments right now being constructed. So you asked me about the master plan. I believe that action is necessary. I believe right now it may be just because it is election time that is being addressed, because if it has not been addressed since 2013 and we're already in 2019, that is almost 7 years. Mm-hmm. Nothing has happened. So under my watch, again, proper planning will prevent poor performance. We cannot continue to keep dumping on an infrastructure that is fractured. We need to address it. So my vote to your answer, I will vote for it, but I will also act on it right now. It will not be sitting there for another 4 years saying that we're discussing it, we're meeting on it, we're deciding on it.
Yeah, because that's exactly what the folks that win in this cycle are going to be coming into. Mm-hmm. It's going to be the implementation of that plan and figuring out how to go forward with implementing zoning,
yes,
as it was described in the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right now the current thinking is that it's going to be kind of divided up by council district, and each council district will kind of be responsible for its own implementation of zoning. Do you think that's an effective way to do it?
It's fair, mm-hmm. because my district is growing exponentially, whereas there's a lot of rural areas that just, they have their land, they're quiet, my district, the population has exploded. So, yes, I would think that my district would be one of those that would be phased in immediately
Mm-hmm.
because of the influx of construction and the influx of what's going on. Because people, as I walk doors, they are concerned. They are concerned because the homes that are being built are more elevated than theirs. They're concerned about the flow of water from those new developments. And they should not be living in fear of flooding because someone is dumping a housing unit next to them that is higher than where theirs is, or a mobile home park across the street from their $300,000 home because there's no zoning and you're just dumping it. So yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be my priority.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Well, as a parish council person, you kind of exist in a realm where you have 30 number one priorities. What other than drainage, infrastructure, zoning, all that good stuff, and recycling, obviously, what's another one we haven't touched
One of the
about?
things you haven't touched on, which was concerning me every time I go to the council, well, not every time because I've missed a few, campaigning, there's this overwhelming fever of waivers. Waivers. That's what that book is for, that ordinance.
Yeah.
The waivers. Why do you keep wavering ordinances? Look at the ordinances. If it needs to be amended, fine. But stop doing waivers. And so I would definitely not vote on another waiver until we can talk about why it is that Ordinance 58 needs a waiver, Ordinance 28 needs a waiver. Look at the ordinance.
Yeah.
Maybe it don't need a waiver. Maybe we just need to amend it to be either less restrictive. You
Sure.
know? But if we continue to waiver, we don't need an ordinance book. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah. Kind of go back and look at the root causes and assess.
Yes. Accept. There
There
you
you
go. That's my word.
There you go.
Yes.
Well, the last question I have for you today is the
Yes.
one that we end all of the coffees with. And of course, it's got to do with books. We can't be in a bookstore and not talk about books. So
Yes.
it actually comes from our job application here at the store. So give us 2 books that have most impacted your life and tell us how. Give us one fiction and one nonfiction.
Okay. And I've been thinking about that as I look through your vast array of books. 2 of them come to mind. I'm going to go with the the nonfiction first because it was most recent. In 2017, of course, I retired. I was only 55, so I was thinking, what do I do? Where do I go? What do I continue to do besides traveling? And Michelle Obama came out with a book called Becoming. And it was just that title, Becoming. And the way she explained it is that as long as you are growing, as long as you're doing something, then you are becoming. So I said, I like that because I started running immediately after 2017. I think it was December 2018, I started recycling, and then January or February, I started running. I'm becoming. So that's one of the things that has impacted my life. I'm now almost 58, so I'm still evolving. And the second one is from Francis Ray, I Know Who Holds Tomorrow. That's my fiction. And that touches me spiritually because we all think we know what's to come. And if you had asked me in 2017, would I be running for office in 2019, I would have said, no, I'm traveling. So God holds tomorrow. He knows. So I'm enjoying that book by Francis Ray. I enjoyed it. Of course, it wasn't a spiritual book, but the title was a spiritual connection to me.
Yeah.
So I know who holds tomorrow. It is not I, but I know who holds tomorrow. So
That's awesome. I always love hearing about books that affect people so profoundly. It's absolutely fantastic. Well, that's all I've got for you. So I will we'll go ahead and end the video now so you can chat with everybody that came out. And thanks so much for having coffee with us.
Thank you again for being flexible.
Oh,
I appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Thanks for coming out.
Bye.